Nobody wants my baby, not even him. She whispered those words sitting in the snow, her wedding dress soaked and heart shattered. That was the moment Eli saw her for the first time. A runaway bride, a single dad with a broken past, and a secret threat hiding in the shadows. But what if the man she was running from never really left? You won't believe who shows up in the end, and what he left behind. Watch till the end. This story will break you, and then put you back together. The wind howled through Maple Hollow, clawing at the chapel's stained glass windows as Marin sat alone on the icy steps. Her wedding dress, once a vision of hope, was now a tattered ghost, its lace hem soaked from the snow. Her phone lay discarded, Carson's text glowing like a wound in the dusk. I can't do this. The baby. It's too much. I'm gone. Her. Hands trembled, clutching a leather-bound notebook filled with baby names. Evelyn, Theo, Grace, each one a fragile dream now crumbling. Nobody wants my baby, she whispered, her voice breaking, lost in the storm's roar. Inside the chapel, Eli Thatcher froze, his violin bow hovering mid-air. At 32, the single dad was no stranger to grief. His wife, Lila, had died 4 years ago, leaving him to raise their 6-year-old son, Jonah, in a world that felt too heavy. Eli's days were a blur of carpentry jobs, Jonah's endless questions, and the quiet ache of a heart that hadn't healed. But Marin's words, raw and piercing, stopped him. He could have walked away, his coat already zipped, Jonah waiting at home with a sitter. Instead, he pushed open the chapel's oak door, the creak echoing like a question. Marin flinched, her tear-streaked face snapping up. Eli stood silhouetted against the chapel's glow, his flannel jacket dusted with snow, his eyes steady but cautious. Without speaking, he sat beside her, close enough to offer warmth, far enough to give her space. "Cold out here," he said, his breath clouding in the air. Marin didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. His presence was a quiet anchor, a flicker of light in her darkness. Eli didn't pry that night. He offered his coat, then invited her inside to warm up. The chapel smelled of cedar and candle wax, its pews empty but heavy with unspoken stories. Marin clutched her notebook, her fingers tracing the names as if they could hold her together. "You don't have to talk," Eli said, sitting across from her, his voice low, grounding. "But you don't have to be alone." Hours later, Marin admitted she had nowhere to go. Her apartment was leased out, her family a distant memory fractured by years of silence. Eli made a choice that felt both reckless and right. "Come to my place, just for tonight. Jonah's there. He'll probably try to sell you on dinosaurs." Marin, too exhausted to argue, followed him to his farmhouse on the edge of Maple Hollow. The house was weathered, its porch creaking underfoot, but inside it was warm, cluttered with Jonah's toys, Eli's sheet music, and the faint scent of maple syrup. Jonah, a whirlwind of curls and curiosity, greeted her with a gap-toothed grin. "Are you a princess?" he asked, eyeing her dress. Marin managed a small laugh, the first in days. Over pancakes, Jonah's favorite, she felt a crack in her armor. Eli and Jonah didn't judge, they simply included her. That night, Eli played his violin, a haunting melody that seemed to cradle her grief. Jonah slipped a crayon-scrawled T-Rex drawing under her door, labeled "For the Baby." Marin fell asleep on the couch, the drawing tucked beside her notebook. A tiny spark of hope. Days turned into weeks. Marin stayed, her presence weaving into the farmhouse's rhythm. Her notebook evolved from a symbol of loss to one of possibility. Eli suggested Silas, a name rooted in resilience. Jonah, giggling, offered Jellybean, his eyes bright with mischief. The names became a ritual, a quiet defiance against Carson's betrayal. But a question loomed, sharp and unspoken. Could Marin trust this fragile new beginning, or was it doomed to unravel? Maple Hollow buzzed with gossip, the runaway bride, the widower, the farmhouse. Whispers followed Marin, like a shadow. At the general store, Mrs. Hargrove's voice carried, "What's a girl like that doing with Eli Thatcher? Trouble, that's what." Marin overheard, her confidence wavering. Then came the first twist. A letter slipped under the farmhouse. Door, unsigned, scrawled in jagged ink. "You don't belong here, leave." Marin's heart pounded. Was it Carson, a spiteful neighbor? She hid the letter, but Eli noticed her unease. "Something's wrong," he said one evening, his voice gentle but firm, as they sat by the fire. Marin hesitated, then showed him the note. Eli's jaw tightened, his eyes scanning the words. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Not unless you choose to." His resolve steadied her, but the mystery deepened when a second note arrived days later. "You're not one of them. Get out." Fear crept in, a shadow over their quiet days. Then Carson returned, a storm in human form. He cornered Marin at the town diner, his charm polished but hollow. "I panicked," he said, his eyes glinting. "I'm ready now, for you, for the baby." Marin's pulse raced. A part of her, the part that had loved him, faltered. But Eli's quiet strength, Jonah's unfiltered joy, anchored her. "You left us," she said, her voice steel. "We don't need you." Carson's smile twisted and he leaned close. "You'll regret this," he whispered before storming out. That night a third note appeared, taped to the farmhouse window. "You can't hide forever." Marin's fear spiked, but Eli acted fast, enlisting his friend, Sheriff Callie, to investigate. Callie uncovered a lead. Carson had been seen lurking near the farmhouse, his car spotted at odd hours. But a deeper twist emerged. Carson wasn't acting alone. Mrs. Hargrove, the town's gossip queen, had been feeding him information, bitter that Marin had stolen Eli's attention. Confronted, Mrs. Hargrove broke down, admitting her jealousy. Carson, however, vanished, leaving Marin to wonder if the threat was truly gone. Christmas Eve brought a fragile peace. The chapel glowed with candlelight, packed with townsfolk. Eli played his violin, a melody he'd written for Marin, each note a confession of his growing love. After the service, snow fell in thick flakes. Marin, wrapped in Eli's scarf, found herself swaying with him in the churchyard. "You're not broken," he whispered, his hand brushing hers. "You're brave." Marin's heart stuttered, but a shadow moved in the trees, a figure watching. She gasped, gripping Eli's arm. They searched, but the figure was gone, leaving only footprints in the snow. The moment, tender yet tense, felt like a vow laced with danger. The note stopped, but the unease lingered. Marin threw herself into preparing for the baby, knitting tiny hats and helping Jonah decorate a nursery corner in the farmhouse. Eli taught her to play simple chords on his violin, their laughter filling the house. Jonah, sensing the tension, drew a picture of Marin, Eli, and Jellybean as superheroes, a gift that made Marin cry. She tucked it into her notebook, a shield against the unknown. Then a new twist. Callie uncovered a hidden detail. Carson had been working with a developer, Simon Whitaker, who wanted Eli's farmland for a strip mall. The notes weren't just personal, they were part of a scheme to drive Marin out, destabilizing Eli's resolve to keep the farm. Simon, a slick outsider, approached Eli with a generous offer to buy the land. Eli refused, his voice steady. "This is our home," he said, glancing at Marin and Jonah. Simon's smile was cold. "You'll change your mind," he said before leaving. As Marin's due date neared, a blizzard roared into Maple Hollow, fiercer than any in decades. Power lines fell, roads vanished under snow, and the midwife was stranded. Marin's contractions came fast, relentless in the flickering light of a lantern. Eli, his calm masking panic, became her anchor. "You've got this," he said, his voice her lifeline. Jonah, wide-eyed but brave, held her hand, whispering, "Jellybean's coming." In the chaos, Marin gave birth to her daughter, Maeve Grace Thatcher, in Eli's arms. The room was silent, but for Maeve's cry, a sound that shattered Marin's lingering doubts. Eli, tears streaming, wrapped the baby in a quilt, handing her to Marin. Jonah, peering over, declared, "She's perfect." In that moment, they were a family, not by blood but by choice. But the storm hadn't finished with them. A final note arrived, slipped through a cracked window as the blizzard raged. "You'll never be safe." Callie, braving the snow, traced it to Carson, who'd been hiding in a nearby cabin with Simon's backing. Arrested, Carson confessed to the notes, driven by jealousy and Simon's promises of cash. Simon, exposed, left town under legal pressure, his plans crumbling. The threat dissolved, but Marin's courage had already taken root. 2 years later, Maple Hollow's winter festival sparkled under a starlit sky. Marin, now a confident mother, carried Maeve, her laughter mingling with Jonah's as he built a snow fort. Eli led them to the festival's heart, where a bonfire roared. In a quiet moment he knelt, pulling a sash from his pocket, embroidered with "The Vow I Kept." "Marin," he said, his voice thick, "I promised myself I'd stay no matter what. I'm asking you to stay with me forever." Marin, tears falling, nodded, her notebook tucked in her coat, a chronicle of her journey from abandonment to love. As they embraced, Jonah cheered, Maeve giggled, and the crowd clapped, the town's whispers replaced by warmth. Hey, if this story gripped you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Marin had found her home. The farmhouse, once a refuge, was now a haven of music and joy. Eli's violin wove their story into Maple Hollow's fabric, his melodies played at every festival. Jonah, now 8, taught Maeve to say jelly bean, his pride boundless. Marin's notebook, once a symbol of loss, held dreams, names for future adventures, sketches of their life together. The threats were gone, Carson and Simon fading into irrelevance. 5 years later, Marin stood on the chapel steps, not in a wedding dress but in a simple coat, watching Eli chase Jonah and Maeve through the snow. She opened her notebook, adding one final word: enough. She'd never been too much or alone. She was enough, loved, whole, and home. The farmhouse thrived, its fields blooming, a testament to their resilience. Maple Hollow, once a place of judgment, now celebrated the Thatchers, their story a quiet legend of second chances and unbreakable bonds.